Hello and welcome to the Tavern Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, your main proprietor at the Tenkar's Tavern blog. This is another in our series of designers and makers, again, loath to call them interviews because there isn't much of a script. Somebody suggested Fireside Chat. Maybe we'll go with that. Josh Beckelheimer, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Now, as I mentioned to you before the show, I have 5 questions that I ask of everybody who drops in to hang out, and I'm going to hit you with those 5 questions, maybe a 6th question, but we shall see. All right. Tell us about your first RPG experience.
My first experience was with 3.5. I'm much younger than most of the people that venture to the tavern. I'm 32, and I got into gaming when I was like 18, which is
Okay.
around 3.5.
Yeah.
But my uncle's best friend, he was visiting him, and he wanted to run the game. And it was my first game. I had like this fighter who was like this alcoholic. I would drink and had to do like constitution checks. And I got to the point where I actually passed out. It was some fun stuff, and I was collecting heads. And the cleric was not happy at all. But it was like my first time playing. It was a blast. It ended with some PCs dying in the main fight with the Mind Flayer. So it was amazing.
It's like drugs, right? The first hit is free, and then after that, after you're hooked, then it starts to cost you money.
Yes, it did.
What is your go-to RPG system and why?
It is typically a white box version of like Swords and Wizardry because I can do it without any books, without anything, just dice and piece of paper. And I can make up stuff on the fly. And I often do the whole little dungeon world type of thing where I ask my players questions and I just use their answers. And it makes my life easier doing it that way.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna have to ask you more about that as we get deeper into this episode. All right, let me file that one away and make a notation. Interesting. All right. Well, since you came in with 3.5, this might not even have come up to you, but race as class, yay or nay?
When it comes to my white box games, I love race as class because people can be like, hey, can I be a Minotaur? Yeah, here we go. This is what it looks like. You're done.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I remember reading when I first came into the history and Gary talking about, being able to play races that weren't in the book. We didn't do much of that, surprisingly enough. All right, another question for you. Where do you stand on save or die? And I have to clarify, it's not the podcast, it's the mechanic.
I'm a fan of Save or Die because white box style of gaming should be deadly and very thought out. You're not running in there like you're some kind of epic hero automatically. You're just a person trying to survive.
Very true. All right, last question. Now, you came into gaming at the age of 18, so technically this still does apply to you. What would the teenage you think if they could see what you would accomplish in a hobby by this point in your life?
Well, I never would have thought I'd be, writing one-page adventures or doing artwork for like RPG stuff. I've always imagined myself as just being a writer, a fantasy writer though. And typically I've always wanted to be like a young adult fantasy writer. Even today I kind of want to get into that.
It's a good way to come into it. All right, nice. All right, so now, yeah, this movie might have skipped your. You came in at the age of 18. You've only been in the hobby for 14 years. Hawk the Slayer. Have you ever seen the movie?
I have not.
Okay. This is like a defining movie for a lot of people who came into gaming in the late 70s or the 80s, somewhere between, the white box 1E, 2E era. And listen, it is a low budget British flick, but Jack Palance eats up the scenery, and you can see if you watch it from the D&D perspective, it's certainly a D&D party. But if you get a chance, it's on Amazon, but it's not Prime. You actually got to pay $3 to rent it or something like that.
Okay, I'll look into it for sure then.
All right, now since you mentioned this in our initial questions, I want you to expand upon this because this is pretty interesting. So you ask, do you sit down at the table with your game group when you're running a game? Like, how much of an adventure then do you have prepared, or is it a lot of it improv, or all of it improv?
Typically, I'll either have one of my one-page adventures printed out in front of me, or like one game I played with my family who never played D&D before, and they wanted to see what it was like. I just winged it. I mean, I asked them a series of questions, and from there, we had a game going.
See, that is awesome. That is an excellent way to play. And by the way, your one-page adventures are a great resource to have in your hand if you're looking to do a pickup game, or if you get that emergency DM responsibility because the scheduled DM either can't play or for some reason has nothing prepared. Now, what got you into writing those one-page adventures?
My anxiety, I have a hard time reading modules because I feel like I must know everything about it. So it's very hard for me to prep a game. I'm trying to read these modules, and it's like, there's no way I'm going to know everything in this room. But of course, no one does, and no one should.
Right.
It's just that I found out if I just print out everything I need on one piece of paper, my anxiety drops, and I could just play the game, and we're good to go.
So, how many of these one-shoot adventures now do you have written up?
I think 15, maybe. I haven't done one in a few months. I've been focusing more on artwork, but it's about 15. And really, most of them are set in the same made up world. Like there's no real world, but it's meant to be in the same, fake world that the people create based on their own experiences running their one-page adventures.
So there's like a default setting, but it's not defined beyond what you find in the adventures then.
Correct, because I have 2 adventures that take place in a town called Krasmere. So, I mean, to me, that is like the home base for the adventurers. And then the other one-page adventures are out in the world somewhere.
So now your one-page adventures are written for Swords and Wizardry, I'm assuming then?
Yes, they are.
And all right, so as a DM, what level range is your preferred stretch that you feel the most comfortable running games in?
I like low-level ones, but not too low. I really don't want people getting like out instantly. But
Right.
but I like it to where there is some great enemy that you probably should avoid, or if you're clever enough, you could do something about it. But then there's also, the little small minions that they can handle, but if they're too stupid and just not thinking that they can overcome them.
So what are you saying then? I guess levels 3 to 5.
Something around there, yeah. Because usually what I'll do is like if we're playing like a quick pick me up game, I'll say you guys are level 2, max health, and then let's just go from there.
Yeah, that's even when I run at cons, and I'm running Swords and Wizardry Light, I always, you start out at first level. You can level up if they do enough sessions, but I always do that max health or max hit points at first level because it's tough enough as it is. If your magic user rolls a 1 or your fighter rolls a 1, what good is it?
Yeah, I mean it can be rough if that happens. And I've played games where usually my little Siege of Krasmir adventure, it's set up that way to where you roll what you get, and if you die, you make a new character because you're just someone part of the village that's trying to defend it.
That makes sense. You have your built-in replacement characters then based upon the village. Not a bad idea at all.
Yeah, because when I run that one, it's really for people that are wanting to test out old school D&D. So it gives them that freedom to, you know, be risky, try things out, figure things out. If you die, roll up another character really fast before your next turn, and we'll just keep going.
Now, you mentioned that you started with 3.5. How did you find the earlier rule sets?
I wanted to play D&D with my daughter. I mean, she got like around 6 years old. She seemed to be interested in it and seemed like she can sit down and play. And the only book I had was the 3.0 Player's Manual. So then I went out
Okay.
and bought Pathfinder because I was like, oh, this has almost everything I need. But then I found out quickly that it is too much for what I wanted. And then I just searched online, pretty much Google searches like how to play Pathfinder, with rules light. And then it
Right.
led me all the way to OSR. And then I discovered Swords and Wizardry, and I was hooked.
I mean, when I came, I took a long break from gaming, mostly due to my employment. For a number of years was uh, not really the hours and the days off did not really work well if you wanted to continue with your gaming group, and that was an issue. But when I came back, I had followed gaming. I still collected the 3.0, the 3.5, some fourth edition stuff, Pathfinder stuff. I didn't even played any of it, and it was much. I mean, the game got so complicated when I was away, and then I found the OSR, and I think the first rules I found was Labyrinth Lord, or no, actually before that even Castles and Crusades, and I was like, this I can handle. This is what I'm looking for. So I can understand, looking for something simpler.
Yeah. What's funny, when I found it, it was like you can go to the Swords and Wizardry website still and just, download the documents. So I even have like the monster document printed out in this gigantic binder that had like hundreds upon hundreds of monsters in it.
It's a great community for that, and I know Matt had the Swords and Wizardry core rules up as an RTF file. I have it somewhere. I think I have it linked on the blog site. I might not. I know I have permission to share it out. I really should make it available because it's just if you want to house rule your own rules that are old school in nature, having an editable file is so much easier than having to rewrite everything.
I mean, I agree. That's why I couldn't look at Pathfinder and be like, there's no way I can make this easier to play without spending so much time on it. So that's what led me to the OSR and ditching Pathfinder.
I mean, like Pathfinder has the beginner box, and I will say the beginner box is a huge value in a lot of ways, just because of the the cutouts, the pogs, I guess you could say, and the fact that they did strip away a lot of the complexity of Pathfinder. It's probably a Pathfinder that I could have run if I put the time into it, but it only I think went for 3 levels, pretty much like a basic box. So there wasn't a huge amount of gameplay in it. And if you look at Swords and Wizardry, we took the Swords and Wizardry rules and were able to trim that down to 4 pages and 3 levels, and I don't think you can do that with Pathfinder.
No, you couldn't do that at all. But the one thing I do like about those guys is their modules, how they break them apart in 6 different parts. I mean, in the end, it's more money than buying, a 5e module, but it's affordable for other people that want to pick up a game. You can spend $15 on part 1 of a module. It has 6 parts to it. And I think that way of doing the modules is great.
Yeah, I actually subscribed to that for the first, oh my God, probably 2 years or so before I realized I was never going to run Pathfinder. But yeah, I mourned the loss of Dragon and Dungeon magazines when they closed up shop as print. Even if I wasn't running 3rd edition, just reading them was a lot of fun.
I actually have a lot of those. A buddy of mine just gave them to me. He had them back when he used to play. He just had them in these boxes and never looked at them again. And so he just gave them to me because I gave him at the time I was doing screen printing, and I gave him a discount, and that was part of the deal, was getting all those Dungeons and the Dragon magazines.
One hand washes the other, and that's a beautiful way to handle it. I mean, my complaint with the old Dragon magazines, I don't think this applied. The Dungeon had a better cover, but the old Dragon magazines, like with issues in there, anything from like probably, I don't know, before maybe issue 110, the covers had a habit of just falling off. The cover paper tore very easily from the staples. It was very upsetting. I still have most of mine. It just didn't make it so upsetting I got rid of anything, but they didn't hold up to wear too well. I read the shit out of them.
Yeah, when I was looking through the dungeon ones, there was this one adventure, like the Fountain of Life or something, but it comes out with like a huge fold out battle map that you can use. Like the guy never used it. It was still stapled in, perfect condition. It was pretty awesome. I ran that with my daughter. The moment I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, we got to play this."
Well, the old TSR ones, TSR had a habit of, occasionally putting in full game. I think Snit's Revenge was first published in Dragon magazine before moving on to, standalone box. I think, what was the other one? Kings and Things. There's a lot of Tom Wham stuff. But, that was back when publishers used to do that to bring people in. We're lucky you can find anything in print these days. But now, Josh, you mentioned that you're doing artwork now. Who are you doing? Is this like stock art, or are you working with publishers, or where can we find your work?
I am doing some stock art. There's a website, rpgstockart.com. I found that through Fail Squad Games, and the website's great because it's only dedicated to stock art. There's nothing else there. There's like no adventures, nothing like that. So you just go to the site, and it's just a bunch of stock art. And I have a few pieces on there, and then I have a few pieces on a drive-through RPG as well.
Now, do you have a favorite type of genre? Fantasy, superhero, science fiction?
A lot of my work right now is just bizarre weird. I had a bunch of those tentacle monsters. Like I think I had like 7 different monsters with all kinds of different tentacles. And then I have a couple of more future, modern, like post-apocalyptic sci-fi characters that I did. But right now I'm doing a commission piece. It's a bunch of spaceships and stuff. Which is my first time doing anything like that.
Oh, Very nice. All right, I'm gonna have to follow up with you on that one when that project releases. I'm assuming you're not gonna tell us who you're working for, but that's okay.
No, not yet.
That's okay. Well, listen, it's if you can write and you can draw, you're ahead of the game in this industry.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah, and that's the main reason why I started doing the art. Because I mean, like, I'm not the greatest artist, but like when you go look at those old monster manuals, I look at them like, well, I can draw that good.
And you know what? That's what a lot of old school publishers, especially the third party publishers, are looking for. They're looking for artwork that evokes that same kind of feel. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that my Mustang manual probably opens up automatically to the page with the succubus on it. But I think that's the way most of the people that grew up with the one Mustang manual are going to be able to say, you know, it, well, yeah, I'm not saying it was the best art, but it was drawn well enough, and it was evil, or she was evil, and is what it is.
Yeah, and I like that style because it isn't the greatest, but at the same time, it's clear what it is. You know what it is. It's not like it's like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, some of it gets a little too artsy, I guess, for the sake of being artsy. And I'm not trying to be pompous by saying that, and I am certainly not an artist. That that skipped me. Both my parents, they paint, they work in oils and they work on acrylic, and yeah, I work on blogs and podcasts. I kind of know where my skills lie, not in
Well,
the
like
visual medium.
I wanted to pick up the, just doing artwork because artwork is the bulk of the money when it comes to any published stuff. And I can't afford artwork, so I figured I could just do my own artwork.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I've never commissioned artwork. I own the rights to a shit ton of stock art because I've picked it up over the years, even before I knew if I was going to publish anything. Um, and I really think that, and I've seen the prices for commissioned work. I commissioned uh, a logo for a magazine. I hope to get out at some point. And I personally feel, well, actually, I shall say, I've also purchased art that I've used on Tenkar's Tavern as the blog banners and such. And I've had stuff that's been donated. I've had stuff that's I've paid $100 for. I have stuff I paid $500 for, and I still think that the artists in general are vastly underpaid for the work they do. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it's true.
yeah, maybe it's because I can't do it and I appreciate it more. But I've talked to artists like Doug Kovacs, and Doug has amazing talent, and I've bought some of his originals. Rich and I bought a unique uh, piece that he did, but I really look at some of these amazing artists that we have in our hobby, and if they can make a living off it, I'm just happy for them. I'm surprised because I tend to think that most of them undersell themselves, but then again, maybe it's the publishers that underpay them. A little bit of one, a little bit of the other, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, you want to get your work shown, so you're gonna agree to be like, yeah, you can pay that because I just want my work out there.
And I understand that. And you know what? There are, authors breaking into the hobby that are the same way. With that being said, once you start getting established, I think that even established artists in our hobby, and I shouldn't say hobby because but in the old school marketplace or even RPGs in general, I think that for the work they do, many of them aren't paid what I think the market should bear. That's just my opinion. Of course, those publishers out there, they get mad at me right now because I'm spending your money. I'll be the one buying your product anyway. The extra dollar or two in price that you might have to pass on isn't going to stop me. But all right, now so Josh, what do you have anything coming up now? Any projects in the works that we should know about?
Um, I'm kind of working on like a semi mega dungeon. I got notes written out, but I'm working on this commission artwork piece. I haven't been able to work with it, but the goal is to kind of bring my one page adventures into one big collective work that makes sense.
Oh, okay, so you're gonna like all right. So the 15 that you've written and maybe a few more that are in the pipeline into one comprehensive story arc, I guess, and as one product.
Yeah, something like that, but it also very, very sandboxy. It's going to be set to where I want to make it to where the world is living and breathing, and there are things that I'll have. Like I already have ideas for like how the DM, GM, whatever they call themselves these days,
Right.
will take note on. Okay, so this is what's happening in the world now. If the players do not interact, this is what's going to happen in the end. Now, none of them are going to be like world destroying things, but it could be the players been focusing so much over here, they didn't see this army building up on this side of the world because they ignored all the little plot hooks and details that the GM's been feeding them.
Okay. So basically, you're gonna build in a timeline of events that are going on. Now, is this like an if and like if the party does this stuff, the timeline goes this way, or if the party does this, this is the likely way. Okay.
Yeah, something like that where there's a timeline for everything that's involved. And it's more of a say if you were running a game and I was running a game, we'd have a completely different world because it would be based on what your players are doing.
I got you. All right. So in a way, it works like a flow chart, like we learned back in high school in science class. Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I my friend Keith Davies, I think, would eat something like that up because he's always got that kind of a mind going. Interesting.
And that's how I view it because it's like a lot of people like to have it set where nothing happens in the world unless, the players interact with it. But I like it to where there is always something going on.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the players are movers and shakers, but they're not the only ones in the world. And if it becomes too party focused, then your players start becoming the ones like I learned back in my gaming days. Uh, if they walk into town and everybody isn't suddenly bowing at their feet and offering them free drinks, they get upset because look at all that we've done, and they forget that they're not the only ones doing.
Exactly. Things like that. I mean, and I want it set up to where the characters aren't going to be like these legendary heroes. I mean, just because they've destroyed, some demon and all that, it doesn't mean like, oh, great. Now 5 demons came because we completely ignored what was happening here.
Oh, definitely. And on top of that, if you think about it, who can tell the stories the players do except the players, unless they have a NPC henchman. It's going to be their word as to what happened, and what value does their word necessarily have? Which is the way I always like to play it off too.
Exactly. And like, even whenever I do my like white box games, when I ask the questions and stuff, I use those answers, but I don't use them immediately. They'll forget that they were asked that question. and they'd be like, "Oh crap!"
It's a beautiful way to handle it. All right. Well, I think we've covered it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how your. It's like a mega dungeon slash drop-in setting. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, the mega dungeon part is going to involve the town of Krasmere, because one of the one page adventures it takes place during like this earthquake that destroys the town, and so the mega dungeon part is going down into the chasms and figuring out what's all in there and what's coming up, while various things are happening around the village and like the world, like the region of the world that the town's in.
Okay. So now, uh, judging from the fact that you're currently working on a commission project, I'm assuming that this is late 2019 or when it's ready.
More like when it's ready.
Okay. Well, Josh, thank you very much for stopping by. It's been good. I've known you for a while online. It's finally good to get a voice to you and to get to talk to you.
Thanks, man. I enjoyed this.
Awesome. Folks, as always, thank you for joining us. God bless. Stay healthy. I'm trying. I'm not quite there at the moment, but trying. Roll your dice well, and I will talk with you all tomorrow. Later, folks.